quite possible that there's a relationship between certain writing styles and the way one talks about certain writing styles, and the I guess the sort of paradigm of knowledge that we're working within. And we're striving for what I might call objectivity, by which I mean in the context of what I'm talking about here, when we're trying to establish the kind of entity of knowledge. We're trying to configure the phrases that we're saying and the impression that those phrases are constructing is as some kind of object. When we're trying to create an object of knowledge that might be possessed in the way that David Perkins talks about possessive knowledge, what we would try to do with the language of conveyance of that knowledge, we would try to make it as transparent as possible. And again, I can't even talk about this stuff, I don't think, without embracing the metaphors that I'm involved in analysing. We try to speak lucidly, we try to speak clearly, we try to avoid any obfuscations, we try not to be opaque. All of these ideas, these metaphors, these phrases, these terms of speech, figures of speech, what they seem to be doing, I think, is describing a property of this imaginary landscape in which we're standing and across which, or within which, we're positing this hypothetical knowledge object. If we wanted, if we were working with that kind of schema, that kind of metaphor structure of the knowledge as object, we would want that object to mirror objects in the real world, and we would want them to have the same status as certain objects in the real world. And an object in the real world is most visualizable, most present in interpersonal shared visual space, if the space between the eye and the object is clear and transparent and lucid and free of obstructions and obfuscations, and there's no conceptual fog in the way and all that kind of thing. So that property of lived experience, in which objects acquire solidity and clear outlines and are well defined, partly by the clarity of the space between the eye and the object, seems to be one of the entailments that carries over to metaphors of knowledge. And the hypothetical space, the imaginary space, the metaphorical space between the speaker, the imparter of that knowledge, the constructor of that knowledge possibly, and the hypothetical knowledge object, that metaphorical space has to be given the illusion of being equally clear, transparent, lucid, and so on. The way that seems to be done is the avoidance of any conceptual fog, any stirring of that up, an avoidance of any the avoidance of any kind of obfuscating substrate in the way. The absence of any colour in that space. It's a pure, clean, clear space that one is trying to construct, metaphorically speaking, with the language one uses, such that there is this impression of an easy transmission of light, an easy transmission of knowledge, of perception to the object. So the language that one would use to describe the object of knowledge would be as free as possible, or as apparently free as possible, of any other objects, any other actions, any other behaviours, any perturbations in the air, any colouring in the air. So, for example, we would avoid the use of any purple prose. We would not speak poetically, because if we did that, the purpleness of the prose would colour the air between the eye and the object, and the air would be subsequently less lucid. Also, we would avoid apparently intruding other metaphorical objects which might stand in the way of the object that we want to portray as having sovereignty and unique identity. So we'd use language which, whilst it was in actuality highly metaphorical, because as we know from embodied cognition, most language is metaphorical, we would seek terms in which the metaphors were as covert and as hidden and as reclusive and as unconscious as possible. And to the extent that we did use them, we would use ones which supported the idea that we are speaking out into a clean, clear, transparent space, with the only echo coming off the object that we intended to come off.